So let's now turn to the peace settlement as it's going to be worked out in 1783. The peace process will begin in the summer of 1782. There'll be a preliminary treaty at the end of 1782. It will be signed off on all parties in It will be signed off on all parties in September of 1783. Now, in that peace treaty, the British would promise the Native Americans everything if you will just join us. Literally, Joseph Brant had been in England in 1775 and early 1776, and the king and other policymakers had said, if you just fight for us, we will give you back your Mohawk territory that has been lost to these American settlers. The peace treaty was totally, completely, utterly silent in terms of doing anything for the native population. So Joseph Brant, the Mohawks, the Senecas, the Cayugas, so many others were just cast aside. Well, this makes them very, very vulnerable to what? Because they've been on the losing side. And there are going to be a series of treaties worked out after 1783, two of them at Fort Stanwix in September and into October of 1784. One of the treaties will be worked out with the government under the Articles of Confederation, the Continental Congress. One will be worked out with the state of New York. In both instances, what will happen is, as a penalty for fighting against the Americans, those four nations, the Mohawks, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, and the Senecas, have to give up territory, forfeit territory to the Americans as a penalty for losing the war. This is part of the process of the whole sweeping westward movement. But the Oneidas and the Tuscaroras are exempt. Why? Because they fought for the Americans. In fact, Lafayette himself attends one of these sessions and praises the Oneidas for their stand with the Americans. He did have close working relationships with the Oneidas. And in turn, he will chide the other ones in saying, see, you should have done what? You should have remained neutral. That was the right position. Stay out of the Brothers' War. Now it has spilled over, it has become a civil war among you. You are paying the price in losing your territory. Well, sounds good, doesn't it? Looks like it's going to work out for the Oneidas. But within 1 year of that time, in 1785, the governor of New York, a man by the name of George Clinton, he will begin to send delegations to the Oneidas, or he himself will visit them, and saying, well, you know, there aren't that many of you people. Maybe only 1,000 now are left after the war. You've got 6 million acres. You couldn't possibly use all 6 million acres. Why don't you let us rent some of this land or maybe buy some of this land from you? You couldn't possibly need it. Well, we don't think we want to. And by the way, the Oneidas are very, very disrupted. They've taken a beating. A number of their villages have been destroyed. They're just trying to rebalance themselves. And now the government's in what? Trying to grab their land. The federal government in 1790 tries to put a stop to this. The so-called Indian Non-intercourse Act of 1790 under Washington, who has now become President of the United States under the Constitution of 1787. Well, it said the states are not allowed to negotiate with the Indians, but New York as a state decided we don't need to pay any attention to that because we still think we're more or less a sovereign entity in ourselves. And the whole process of going after Oneida land will continue into and through the 19th century. So that those 6 million acres in 1775 become a grand total of 35 acres in the year 1900. That is the territory that is left to the Oneidas. What have they done in the meantime? What they have done is they've begun to disperse. Some will move to Ontario province in Canada. Some will move to Wisconsin, I'm talking about in the 19th century, and will resettle in the area of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Several thousand Oneida descendants live in that area today. But some of them will remain in New York, and they today form, which is recognized by the federal government, the Oneida Indian Nation of New York.